meeting to order. And the first item, we'll have the pledge of allegiance, led by Mayor Tully.
If you would join me, please, and remember there's no common between one nation and under God.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We might also take a moment of silence for the 9/11 events that occurred. Thank you. Okay, the first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the July 10th, 2014 meeting.
Motion approved.
Discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Reports from committees. TPO advisory committee. We have to take care of that.
You have a copy of the summary of actions from the TACCAC meeting on Monday. You have in place. We will highlight the significant actions. The TACCAC recommends approval of resolution 1507, ratifying the Central Florida TPO Alliance Project priorities. Likewise, adoption of the amendments to the Transportation Improvement Program. Resolution 1509, endorsing the recommendations of the State Regular Annual Motor Corridor Study. The adoption of the non-strategic intermodal system project priorities as distributed. No changes were recommended. Approval of the resolution adopting the 2040 long-range transportation plan and vision map. And new items not on the agenda, but we will be discussing under local government report on our agenda here. It was the consensus of the TAC members present, all jurisdictions affected by all were Florida, were represented at the TAC, and those representatives were in agreement that TPO should apply to the Federal Railroad Administration on behalf of those affected local governments for a continuous quiet zone throughout the board, and to the Florida Department of Transportation for matching funds as needed to implement the quiet zone. As I said, we will have a discussion on the local government report on this topic later on in the agenda.
Okay. Any questions on the TAC? If not, the chair would entertain a motion to acknowledge the receipt of the TAC-CAC meeting minutes of July 7th, 2014.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Accepted.
I did skip over inadvertently the staff report item. The consensus of the TAC and CAC is that the TPO should continue to retain Mr. Goodman as legal counsel. Pardon me.
And that will be discussed.
That will be discussed also.
Item 4B on the agenda, Bicycle Pedestrian Trails Advisory Committee. Kim.
Good morning. Bicycle Pedestrian Trails Advisory Committee last met on September 2nd. I believe you have those minutes in your packet, and topics that were covered in that meeting were, they were given a presentation on the new TPO website, which I think this board will be given at some point as well. And then we went over the transportation alternative projects that are being presented to you, which I also think you'll hear more about later in the meeting. Something that has come up that we're getting a lot of email on in the office is the cyclists that are getting back with us with problems they're having on the bridges, particularly Pineda and O'Galley causeways. With the cleanliness, there's been some minor injuries of people hitting things. There's been a lot of flat tires. So we're trying to work through that, and the FDOT has contracts on both of those bridges We've been working closely with them to find out when there's going to be big cycling events and giving them that information so the bridges can be swept. But we also may look at talking with the city of Melbourne about doing some additional sweeping on the bridge to keep it, because obviously there's no place for debris to go on the bridges except into the areas where the bicyclists are riding. And we're currently fast and furious into the Head Start programs with the schools. Of course, Head Start is a federal program that's for little 3 and 4-year-olds before they get off into regular kindergarten. They have a mandate from the federal government that they have to have pedestrian safety within the first 30 days of their school year. So we are in the process of doing 13 centers and almost 700 school kids here in the next 2 weeks, and we'll be wrapping that up to fit within their 30-day window. And the last announcement I have is Walk to School Day, which you guys hear a lot about. We always do such a great job here in Brevard. Our schools are real full of energy for that program. Will be October, what is it? I think it's the 8th, the first Wednesday. I need to write it down, and I did. I do believe it's the 8th. But we're in the process of advertising that program, and of course we hope that our schools will come out in force like they always do.
Any questions for Kim? Chair would entertain a motion to acknowledge receipt of the draft of the minutes of September 2nd, 2014.
Motion to waive. Second, Chair. We don't have it.
It's at your place, I'm sorry, it's a handout.
Maybe we sat at the wrong place on this end, but they may have run out. We're okay.
If it's not in your packet,
Still need them.
No. It's good. We do now. Thank you.
before we vote on the motion, do you have any questions? How did you see the material? There?
No? Thank you.
I got it.
You got it?
I did get that.
Okay, then we'll vote on the motion to acknowledge to accept. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Next item, 4C, regional coordination report.
A big report, the Central Florida MPO Alliance, which is composed of the 5 MPOs, TPOs in the Central Florida region, annually adopt a set of regionally significant project priorities. That will be an agenda item coming up under consent. There were no changes from last year in the priority sequence. The only changes were updating the status of the various projects. Secondly, the East Central Florida Corridor Task Force that was appointed by the governor to look at connectivity between the Space Coast area and Osceola and Southern Orange County. That group has met twice since we last convened in July. The recommendations are due to the governor December 1st, so the committee is working towards developing recommendations. The items of significance and interest right now appear to be the long-term status and viability of State Road 528, making sure that serves as an effective connector between the port, the airport, and the convention center and attractions area on I-4. And secondly, there's recognition that additional corridor roadway capacity long-term will be needed between southern Osceola County, eastern Osceola County, and South Brevard. So those are items that are being discussed kind of in detail right now. The next meeting of the committee is actually on Monday at the Brevard Zoo at 9 o'clock. Anyone who wishes to attend is certainly invited.
Any questions for Bob on the regional coordinating? Next is the transportation disadvantage report, item 4D. And Jim Eisenbach is going to go to.
Good morning, Mr. Sheriff, members. The local coordinating board met on August 25th. The major item taken was approval of our annual operating report, which is our ridership and our fiscal data that we send back to the Commission for the Transportation Disadvantage. They take that report from all 67 counties, and then that comes back to us in forms of our formula out for us somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.3 million a year. There were 3 other items of business taken care of. There was discussion, Medicaid. As you may or may not know, Medicaid across the state is moving to what I'm calling an HMO type format, and part of the HMO services besides medical is transportation. We don't supervise that program, we don't coordinate it. So we've gone from a model where we've had one company in charge of Medicaid transportation in the county to 4 or 5 different medical providers working through brokers. Luckily for us on the transportation side, it hasn't affected us too much. We haven't had too much feedback from the Medicaid customers. So seeing things to be going pretty well. It has made some major impacts in the rural areas of the state of Florida. Number 2, we talked about emergency evacuation, special needs. Literally, we're in the peak of hurricane season. We're in charge of the special needs transportation. We work with the school board, Brevard County Fire Rescue, and Coastal Ambulance Service. There's 2,300 people on the special needs list. I'm looking at Commissioner Valenci's to operate that. So I'm just coming out as a reminder, as you know, your citizens of areas, your city staff is well up on the issue. But if you know citizens that need transportation to a special needs shelter, to a Red Cross shelter, please call emergency management. We'll get them on the list. It's been a long time since we did transportation, thankfully, but we moved somewhere between 600 and 700 citizens, usually during an evacuation, and then bring them back home. So it's very important, and I will tell you, when you wake up in the morning, you see evacuation starts at 6 a.m. and you think, who's the idiots? That's why are we starting at 6 a.m.? That's our fault. We want to get out, we want to get our folks picked up in the daylight, and we want to get them to the shelters before nightfall, no matter when the storm may arrive. The last item that we talked about was dialysis transportation. I don't want to get too much in the weeds. Dialysis is folks that have to go on dialysis machines. They have to do that 3 times a week. So when we take a dialysis patient to a dialysis center, that's 6 trips a week, every week for the rest of their lives. When I first arrived here in the early 90s, there were 4 dialysis centers. There's now 11 throughout the county. When I arrived, most folks were on what we call the chair time for 3 hours. They're now on the chairs for 4.5 to 5 hours. So it is starting to make an impact on how we do our door-to-door transportation, and it does have a lot to do with our how we schedule our transportation. We used to only provide service on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays. Now we're doing it 6 days a week other than just Sundays. And we used to quit about 6 p.m. at night, but now we have buses out on the road to about 9 o'clock. And our first pickups for dialysis is somewhere in the 5 a.m. in the morning. So it's turned into a full 14-hour day for us through 11 sites, and it's growing. The 2 new sites are opening up this year. I'm sure the next couple of years we'll have 15, 16 different sites. So that has a major impact on how we work our scheduling. And it has an impact on our citizens who are trying to go to something that's not medical related. Food shopping, employment, school, hairdressing, everything. It doesn't matter what the type of trips is. Dialysis is how we schedule around dialysis. Because once we make a commitment to the folks we're taking to dialysis, we can't call them up and say next week we're done taking it. So it's a major deal, and it's becoming a little bit of an impact for our system. So we had a good discussion on that. And that was the summary of the meeting. Is there any questions that you may have?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I have the privilege of recommendation here of serving as chair of that committee, and I don't think we really fully understand the seriousness of this dialysis and how it's affecting people and the length of time that they're there. And 5 hours with the driver standing by hoping he can run and get somebody else. Jim, this is going to grow.
Yes.
And I don't think this board probably needs to realize that this is a pretty serious situation for expansion in Calvert.
Without going too much, I should add, the folks that are riding transportation disadvantaged dialysis centers do not pay for the transportation. Their patients are covered under the TB program, or they could be covered under the Americans with Disability Act transportation. So there isn't much choice for us other than to serve them. Most of the centers are pretty cooperative with us on grouping trips together. So we try to work through the centers, not through the patients. And we have a meeting next week with the new center coming online to try to work their transportation. But yeah, it's only going to get worse. And if it continues at the growth rate in the next couple of years, we'll be looking at somehow trying to change what we do on our fixed routes just to serve more dialysis. I mean, it will become an issue down the road. And especially, we're all getting older, population's getting older, and dialysis, or diabetes is a growing disease across the country for everybody.
Jim went real fast, but just a quick thought, so you can really anticipate the difference. Instead of us going to 4 sites it used to be, there's 11 possible areas that you've got to take people, if they choose where they wanna go, right, Jen? To an extent.
Unfortunately, yeah, we work really hard to try to keep people in the areas that they want to follow their doctors, or their insurance may cover one site, not the other site. So, yeah, they get they get a choice, but we work with them pretty hard to keep them close.
But it's not a very modest change. And the first one he mentioned was about 4 different people doing transporting of Medicare people.
Medicaid.
Medicaid people. And now there isn't just one agency, there is several agencies that they can call. It has changed.
You're telling
Is this growth in dialysis need primarily a result of diabetes?
I'm no medical guy, but yeah, I would say yes. I mean, the number of people on dialysis across the nation just keep growing. And the other interesting thing, as a reminder, we had our statewide, we had the national folks down for our state association conference. And dialysis 30 years ago was an inpatient care. So if you're on dialysis, you're in a hospital. Now it's an outpatient care. I mean, I will tell you, it takes us $30 each way to take a dialysis patient.
I'm sorry, I missed your earlier comment. Do you run this transportation how many days a week?
6 days a week. Yep. So the outpatient care is driving our transportation. And if it wasn't for the transportation, those folks would be in a hospital 6 days a week waiting for their dialysis as opposed to living at home. So it's expensive on our end, but it really saves a lot of the costs on the healthcare system.
Any other questions for Jim? Thank you
Thank you
very
very
much.
much.
Item 5 on the agenda, consent agenda. Bob, you're going to read those various
Yeah.
items.
The consent agenda consists of committee appointments, finance and budget items, renewal of the agreement with Space Florida, resolution 1506, adopting the operating budget, which was presented to the TPO a couple months ago, and there were no changes since its presentation. And resolution 1507 was referenced earlier, the adoption of the Central Florida MPO Alliance project priorities. There are no changes or additions to the consent agenda as was reviewed.
Okay, the chair would entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items A, B, C, D, and E.
Second.
Moved in second, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Action items, item 6 on the agenda. The first one is action item 6C, legal services contract amendment. All that is.
Where are you?
C. Charlie.
6A and B were pulled. There was a supplemental revised agenda.
Thank you. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 6C relates to my contract. As some of you may be aware or may have read in the paper, I'm soon going to be making a change after 27 years of doing legal work here in East Central Florida with the city of Melbourne and a lot of other jurisdictions. And I might add this one for the last 21 or 22 years. I'm going to be making a change on December 1st, but maybe not a complete change. I'm going to be joining a firm in Fort Lauderdale that does a lot of local government work all over the state of Florida on the local government side. So I'm not going over to the dark side. And I will be headquartered in Fort Lauderdale with the Weiss Sirota law firm. And what I have proposed to you all and have proposed to various other clients that I've got here in Brevard County is that I'm not only more than willing, but would be excited about continuing with my contract with you all on exactly the same terms, with one difference and one understanding. The difference would be that effective December the 1st, rather than contracting with me, you would be contracting with my firm, although I would obviously continue to be your attorney. The reason for this, to be quite honest with you, is my arrangement with the firm and also for The understanding I'd like to have though is that I would be permitted to bill you for an extra hour of drive time, 1 hour each way. Obviously, it takes longer than that to get here, go back to Fort Lauderdale. What I am proposing is to split the difference with some other clients that I've got up here. And other than that, no changes in the contract. You continue to see me at the meeting. You wouldn't see somebody else. I don't really anticipate any particular changes. If for some reason, you're displeased with the quality of service, we can certainly always revisit that issue. I don't want to be someplace that people don't want me to be. I think we've enjoyed a pretty good relationship over the last 21 years. As a sort of a sidebar to this issue, I would tell you that I am expecting to continue with the Metropolitan Organization Advisory Council, which is the state MPO. So you'll have the advantage of sort of a statewide perspective on things. And as Mr. Cobb mentioned a few minutes ago, unexpected to me, apparently wasn't on the agenda. The TAC did have some sort of a consensus, I guess. I don't know the vote was taken, but it was a consensus that they are recommending to you, advising to you that you continue with the service. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Question?
If we were to negotiate your salary, do we go through your company or do we go directly through you?
Well, it's set under the contract, and I've already talked with the people down in Fort Lauderdale, and I will tell you that the billing rate is a little less than what they charge. Surprisingly, not a lot. I was kind of surprised about that, and but they understand. The proposal I have is that we live with the contract exactly as it stands right now. The only difference would be the name of the contractor. And then we have the understanding that, yes, I'd be the one who would continue to service this contract and would continue to be here and the drive time understanding.
I prefer to negotiate with you rather than them. I don't know them.
I don't like it. Well, you know what? If it doesn't work for you, you can always terminate.
Oh, no,
No, you can always terminate it, so.
Now,
That's.
the reason I asked that, the rapport you have with this board, of how long you've been here, and people are very comfortable with you.
Well,
I'm not, and I pull no qualms about it. I know.
I appreciate you saying that. I feel likewise. This is a bittersweet opportunity. On one hand, it's a good thing for me. It's a good thing for my family. We've got 3 stepsons down there and a granddaughter, and so from that standpoint, it's good. But on the other hand, I'm going to miss being able to go out to lunch with friends that I've had for 27 years.
I just don't want to see an airplane in your proposal.
No.
Mr. Chairman, I had a couple questions also. One is concerning the contract, that you are stating that you will be the person who is our representative. If anything changes, do we have an out in the contract?
Yes, you do.
So we have that safety net. The other thing I just wanted to warn you as a personal friend is that many people leave Brevard County, but they always come back. So, having maybe 6 months with the relatives, you'll be back.
I've lived in Florida since '58. Before I went off to law school, I went in and met with a then county commissioner, and who told me, he says, well, I was going to move out to California, and because my mom was out there and my aunt and some other relatives. And he said, I wish you good luck. He said, just make sure you have some sand in your shoes. And I says, really? And he says, you'll be back. They all come back. Here I am.
Well, the good thing is that we're still going to have you still have your knowledge, expertise, and the hourly fee that TPO sand in his shoes.
Yes.
Big time.
From a technical point of view, can I assume that the motion authorizes staff and Paul to make any necessary technical corrections to the contract to reflect the change in status?
That is correct.
Item 6D on the agenda, approval of resolution.
Thank you all very much, I appreciate it.
Approval of resolution 50-8, Y15, managing transportation improvement program amendments. Again,
Good morning.
morning.
This is a housekeeping item. September of each year, we do what they call a roll forward TIP amendment, or that's our transportation improvement program. And basically, we're reconciling the funding in fiscal year 14 and fiscal year 15 in the DOT work program. There are times when funding does not get authorized in the work program, and so that it must be moved over into fiscal year 15. In the DOT work program, it just rolls over. But when it comes to our TIP, we have to manually insert it in there and make sure that our TIP is basically a reflection of the work program. So that's what this amendment does. All the projects are listed on page 20 in attachment A. And I will readily admit that the projects, basically you just see the FM number, the project management number. It does not actually say the name of the project. And I know Mayor Tully had a question about that. It can be very confusing. When I went through and looked at all these projects, there really isn't any project that I feel like I need to bring to your attention. However, are there any questions? Maybe in the future, and I'm not sure how other MPOs do it, maybe we can get Lorena to actually put the project name. So even though these are very minor adjustments, at least you can understand what the project is instead of just seeing the project number, if that is sufficient, or if you need more information in that. So are there any
Questions from the
questions?
And this does take a roll call vote, Mr. Mayor. As chairman, I entertain a motion to approve resolution 15-8, amending the fiscal year 2015 through 2018 transportation improvement plan.
So moved. Second.
Chairman Callender?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Bolden Lewis?
Yes.
Colbert?
Yes.
Gowdy? Yes. Green?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Nowlan?
Yes.
Randall?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Tully?
Yes.
Is there anyone I missed?
Long.
Sorry. Long? Thank you.
Motion passed. Thank you, Karen. Item 6, action item 6E, approval of revised resolution 15-5, the 2035 long range transportation plan.
It's me again. On this item, in July, we brought you a group of long-range plan amendments to our 2035 long-range plan that Federal Highway is requiring that we do, mainly due to planning consistency. They wanted all the documents, the descriptions, the project names, such as the Parkway projects. You know, sometimes it was called St. John's Heritage Parkway here or Palmdale Park. They wanted everything to match perfectly as it was in the environmental document. So we had to make some adjustments. The only new project that we had to consider was the beach line. You know, the funding for design, and we needed to put that into our long-range plan. So these amendments were time sensitive, and we had not completed our 30-day comment period, which is required according to our public involvement plan. And so we asked that you approve the amendments in July, and that if we received any substantive comments, that we would bring them back to you. We did not receive any comments on our long-range plan proposed amendments. So what we have done is revised resolution 15-05, basically stating that we did not receive any substantive comments. And we also learned that not all the projects required an amendment. Some of them were so minor that they were just modifications, which we really didn't even need to bring updated attachment, the attachment to the resolution, basically separating the amendments from the modifications. So this is just revising that resolution and letting you know that we did not receive any comments.
Any questions for you, Jack? Chair, yes.
I was curious why they continue to project the cost of $2,010. If you look at the top of that chart.
That was the base, the baseline for the 2035 long-range transportation plan. So the costs were actually projected in $2010 because that was when we got the revenue estimates and it was built. Bob, you may be able to answer that a little better than you do before my time. But the long-range plan, the costs, the estimates were based on the $2010 when it was put together. And so we just,
It just seems odd where you added a project that didn't have a base number to start with. You were now going backwards in effect to project what that would cost in 2010 for this project.
well, correct. That is true, but these are basically the costs that are in the cost. For instance, if you're talking about the beach line, these are the projects in the cost feasible plan. So they are
So it's not really
projected.
$2010.
It really is not, correct. However, we are amending the 2035, which is where it was based on $2010. I know that may not make sense. When we develop our new 2040, which we're in the process of doing, then those costs will be updated, that may change. But that's how this 2035 is developed.
Any other questions for me, Janet? I think we discussed this as a roll call vote. So the chair would entertain a motion to adopt revised resolution 15-5, amending the 2035 long-range transportation plan.
Second?
Discussion. Okay, roll call.
Chair Dallender?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Bolin Lewis?
Yes.
Boldare?
Yes.
Gowdy?
Yes.
Green?
Yes.
Long?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Allen?
Yes.
Randall?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Foley?
Yes.
Anyone who knows? Thank you.
Motion passes. Item 6F. New resolution 15-9, state road A1A multi-modal corridor feasibility study.
Okay, I'm going to end up doing that one. John Moore, our DOT project manager for the A1A study, had planned on giving the presentation on the findings and recommendations. So he just completed here last month. And the PowerPoint is included in your agenda package. However, the reason that he decided not to was that the right-of-way survey that is it's nearing completion throughout the corridor. They're expecting to have that completed in October. And so basically, they do not know with 100% certainty where the right-of-way line is along that corridor. And so even though, we do have a list of projects where they have been identified and submitted to us by the cities of Cocoa Beach and Cape Canaveral, and approved by FDOT. They work very closely with DOT to identify these projects that the department can participate in these projects. Until we know where the right-of-way impacts are, they really can't come and present the project in specific detail. And just to remind everyone, this study began in 2012. It was funded by the TPO. I think we spent exactly about $850,000 on the project. And it was a two-part study. They had the planning part of it, where they did all the data collection and stakeholder interviews, and they did a big public charrette. And then the engineering analysis, where they identified the range of improvements. They developed the concept plans and cost estimates, which we now have. And then it ended with a big public hearing. So basically, we wanted to go ahead and talk about it and do a resolution basically supporting the recommendations from the study and get these projects on our priority list. Yes, the phasing may change. There may be right-of-way needed where we didn't think it priority order, and then you've got Cocoa Beach's projects. And just real briefly, the number one priority for Cape Canaveral is the International Drive realignment to the signalized intersection at North Atlantic and A1A. That's going to enhance vehicle and pedestrian safety. There is going to be some right-of-way needed on that vacant piece of property. That is the number one priority. The number one priority for Cocoa Beach is the intersection of 520 and A1A. There is no right-of-way that's needed on that particular intersection, but it needs to be tightened up to increase that walkability. The free right turn lane needs to be removed, and that will definitely benefit pedestrians as well. And some of the other improvements on this list are boulevard improvements from International Drive to the beach line. This will require reconstruction of the roadway with a 19.5-foot median, open drainage to curb and gutter. So this will require drainage analysis and an environmental analysis. So, the projects are going to be at different stages. They're going to require different things, but we want to try and get these projects funded as quickly as we can. What we can do, we take care of the things we can do real quick, and then go ahead and get in the work program. The projects are going to take a little bit of time. So, are there any questions about the projects?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Representing Cocoa Beach and Cape Canaveral, we share the chair. Yes, I do have some questions. How about the 10 blocks that is Avon by the Sea that belongs to the county? And I don't find them listed anyplace here along A1A.
Well, at the bottom, there is a portion, at the bottom of this listing, it says Brevard County, Cocoa Beach, and that is a portion basically along A1A that goes from the,
Do you have something I don't have?
yes, if you're looking at this section here, Brevard County and Cocoa Beach, towards the very end, the second to the last.
Okay.
And basically, this is from North Patrick to Cocoa Beach, connecting to the existing one-way pairs. That's the section that you're referring to, correct? Is that me?
Commissioner feels his county parks in there.
I think you're talking about the section from about 16th Street all the way to Patrick. We're talking about the section that's from, it's the 13 block.
Barlow to Grant.
Yeah. And I don't see that referenced in here. It's that no man's land between Cocoa Beach and Cape Canaveral.
There actually are two sections of county property between Patrick and Cape Canaveral. One is the north part of Cocoa Beach and one is the south part of Cocoa Beach.
Well, I'm puzzled because I thought this incorporated all of the sections.
Well, if so, it may have meant that, but it doesn't say that. But I guess my real question is, I had the privilege of serving on this committee back in 2000. When it was surveyed, I got a garage full of books like that. What has possibly changed in the survey since the year 2000 was done until now?
The DOT surveyed the project.
What?
We haven't surveyed that project.
You've never done the survey?
We had surveys, but the surveys were from 1950s, way back.
Well, they were good enough for the year 2000.
We needed to bring them up to date because there's a lot of encroachments out there. We need to define where the right-of-way line is.
Okay.
Because this is gonna impact whether the project can go to P&E or it can go straight to design. If we have a clear understanding of where that is, it impacts the money and the estimate on the job. It doesn't change the job, it just impacts where it goes into the work program.
The survey work is from Ineda the whole way to the Bridge King interchange.
Yeah.
It's more than just City of Cape Canaveral.
Yeah.
It's the entire line.
Well, that was done once in 2000. We got books and books of it. But anyhow, if it has to be done, I guess I'm selfishly speaking for Cape Canaveral and Cocoa Beach because we got the dog in the fight. But, this project now is 14 years old and not the first thing that's been done except lots of handouts.
Well, that's why I think now that we have this list of projects, it's so important to get them on the priority list, and we never really had identified projects. And by the way, if there is a section missing, we will address that. DOT worked very closely with the cities, and these were the projects that were submitted to us, and we thought that everything was accounted for.
And I think, please, make a comment. The action in the resolution does two things. If you read the section on the now therefore be it resolved, there are two components to the action. One is to endorse the recommendation of the overall feasibility study. The second is to move the identified priority projects into our project priorities so they can be considered for work program funding. The section in Avon by the Sea, the sidewalks there are treated in the full feasibility study. So by reference, that would be included as part of the resolution. What is not specific is the inclusion of the Avon by the Sea as part of the project priorities. And that could be added in the next agenda item. The list you see with the 1, 2, 3s for the recommendations of Cocoa Beach and Cape Canaveral for inclusion in project priorities. We solicited applications from the jurisdictions and asked them to rank their submissions requesting state and federal transportation funds. The unincorporated area did not submit. Avon by the Sea area, the unincorporated area was not submitted to us as part of the request, so it didn't get on this table specifically. You see the projects here are primarily just the incorporated area. So we can deal with specifically calling out the Avon by the Sea as part of the next agenda.
It's just hard to build a bridge across the river and only go part way.
No, I totally agree. And that's confusing here.
Bob, why can't it be added to this list?
Well, it certainly can. I mean, when you think about that, sure we can certainly add it to the list, and then we're just amending an attachment that thereby would authorize it to be included in the project priorities automatically. Yes, that could be done. I think so. Yeah.
If there's a motion necessary, I'd make that motion.
Well, I suggest the motion could be adoption of the resolution with that amendment.
That was your motion.
Okay, I would make that motion to include that, but I would also like to comment that I appreciate what the TPO has done to stick its neck out to fund this, to get this to this point in time, and because Mary and I have expiration dates on us. I would appreciate going forward that DOT, seriously look at funding this, because it is important to those communities, and I'd like to believe that we're going to be, walking the sidewalks and seeing those improvements in the not too distant future.
And for 15 years. And I know Commissioner Nelson made a motion. Somebody up there.
I did.
Okay.
The two expired.
Thank you, Mayor. Arrows in their back. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Item 6G, a discussion re 2013 state of the system of the non-strategic intermodal system projects priority.
A little orientation on a two-part agenda item. The first is a presentation. Normally we do presentations at the end of the agenda, but that will be out of sequence on the information, because the information in the State of the System report does address the needs of the various roadway segments county-wide, and it provides a technical basis for the project priority. So it's appropriate, we feel, to have this discussion and presentation on the State of the System and the corridor ranking prior to the consideration of the project priority.
Travis Hills, what is it?
All right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. As I mentioned, I'm Travis Hills. I work with Kittleson Associates. I'm here to present the results of the 2013 State of the System. Before I start, at your place, there's two different handouts. One is the PowerPoint presentation, so you guys can follow along with the presentation I gave. The other one is a 4-page handout. That's essentially a summary of the report. It has some infographics in there. It kind of hits the key points that I'll be talking about today, so you guys can look through either of those. So before I jump into the report, I wanted to kind of give everybody a brief overview of why do we do this every year. So the State of the System report is really steps 1 and 2. So we're identifying trends and existing conditions in the county. Those incorporate demographic, transit, and a few of the other ones that you see listed there. That then feeds into the roadway segment rankings, which I'll be discussing at the very end of this presentation, which all then feed into the project strategies and priorities. And the reason for this 3-step process is to answer the question at the bottom is, are the TPO's priorities still on target? So a brief agenda, I'll review trends and existing conditions for the entire county. So we'll look countywide, demographic, transit, bike ped, freight, crash history, and vehicle miles traveled. We'll get into some corridor-specific DMT and congestion trends, and then I'll finish with the roadway segment technical rankings. So moving into the demographic trends, overall the county had a 0.51% growth from 2012 to 2013. This is the highest annual growth rate that we've seen since 2008. As you'll see with the chart on the bottom, over the past couple of years we've seen a trend of the 69 and older population gradually increasing, and we've also seen the population of 17 and younger continuing to decrease. A few highlights from the transit side. Overall ridership has continued to increase with a 9% rise in 2013. Mainly this is fixed route. This also includes Vanpool, which had an increase in ridership for the 3rd straight year. It was 12%. And that's actually, Vanpool ridership is the highest it has been ever in the history of SCAT. So one thing we wanted to incorporate in the presentation this year that we haven't in the past is some bike ped statistics, or bicycle and pedestrian statistics. So what we have is overall in the State of the System roadway network, we're looking at 640 miles of roadway. Of those, 197 have complete sidewalk on both sides, 220 have sidewalk on at least one side, 14 miles have bike lanes on both sides, and 201 of those miles have 3-foot or wider shoulders for bike lanes. And these maps, I know they're hard to see on the screen. They're also in your handout, and they'll also be included in the State of the System report, but this just gives an overview of where those different facilities are for the bicycle and pedestrian network. Quick highlight of the multi-use trails. So Brevard County is developing a system of multi-use trails. I think we're all pretty well aware of that. You'll see the trails listed there. A number of these are planned or either funded or planned for construction over the next couple years. So moving out of bike and ped into freight and ports, quick highlight on the truck vehicle miles traveled, also known as VMT. It decreased along I-95. We saw that it increased along State Road 528, and it also increased along the regional roadways. Melbourne International Airport, as you'll see, has had pretty good growth in total number of enplanements over the last few years. There was a slight drop off between 2012 and 2013, but nothing significant. Port Canaveral, I think, as everyone is well aware, is one of the busiest cruise ports in the state of Florida. It's actually the second largest cruise departure port in the state of Florida. Cargo hasn't been a big priority over the last couple of years, but they're moving towards making it a priority in the future by widening and the deepening of the port. And also they opened Exploration Tower in 2013, which is that awesome picture in the lower right-hand corner. Kennedy Space Center, a quick update on them. With the discontinuation of the shuttle program, they're actually partnering with Boeing on deep space rocket design with a couple test launch planned over the next 6 or 7 years. So moving on to that and into crash history. What we did for this year's State of the System report, to give you guys a little bit of background, we're also working simultaneously on an annual countywide safety report that's going to be published sometime over the next couple months. What that report did is that report takes all of the crash data for the entire county for a 5-year period, summarizes it into various metrics, And what we're doing in the State of the System report this year is we're taking a couple specific metrics, so crash severity and the Florida Strategic Highway Safety Plan emphasis areas. We're pulling those out of the safety report and we're including those as a snapshot in the 2013 SOS. Like I said, we looked at 5 years of safety data instead of a single year. So let me take a step back. In past years, State of the System reports, we've only looked at 1 year of data and we focused on crash rates. So now we're moving towards more of an emphasis on crash severity and the emphasis areas. The bottom bullet there, the contributing factors and detailed analysis of crash safety is not part of the State of the System, but it will be included as part of the annual safety report. So some of you may be wondering what the Strategic Highway Safety Plan emphasis areas are. There are 7 of them that we specifically looked at: aggressive driving crashes, intersection crashes, vulnerable road users, lane departure crashes, impaired driving, at-risk drivers, which is your aging road users and teens, and then distracted driving. We put a few statistics up there from the data that we've seen, and as you'll notice, State Road A1A, US 1, Babcock Street show up on multiple kind of top crash lists that we put together for these various measures. So we also did fatal crash mapping along with this. And as you'll see on the map, this is for the SIS facilities, so this is I-95 and State Road 528. What you'll see with the high crash areas is they're more concentrated in the southern half of the county. So we had a total of 76 fatal crashes in the study period, which was 2009 to 2013. It was the 5-year study period. One thing that we do want to make note of, though, is that I-95 was under construction for a large portion of that time. We did not go to that level of detail in the annual county-wide analysis. We wanted to stay at that kind of 20,000 foot level and kind of address and see what the trends are and then go down from there. So we didn't specifically look at construction crashes, but we know that that probably is a contributing factor to many of those, or to some of those fatal crashes. So fatal crash mapping for the non-SIS facilities, so these are all your regional and non-regional roadways. High crash areas, looking from south to north in the county, a couple highlights: US 1, US 192, also US 1 again, Wickham Road and the State Road 520 corridor. Total, there were 241 fatal crashes in the 5-year period. That's higher than the SIS facilities, but there's also a lot more roadway miles for the regional and non-regional facilities. So moving from fatal crashing into crash severity, for the SIS facilities, what we noticed is we came up with a severity score, which is using the FDOT crash costs for the different crash injury types, so property damage, injury crashes, fatal crashes. We applied those crash costs to each crash severity type that there was to come up with the severity score. I know I can't get into a whole lot of detail at this level, but there is a more detailed explanation of that in the State of the System report and in the annual countywide safety report as well. But what we noticed is that keeping with the fatal crash trends, we saw that the southern half of the county of I-95 popped up at the upper part of this list. So also looking at the non-SIS, we performed the same analysis. A few of the corridors to note: 520, US 1, A1A, Wickham all had multiple segments that showed up on the top 25 for the severity score. So moving out of crash and into the vehicle miles traveled trends, and this is not trucks, this is overall. What we saw is that total VMT declined in 2013, following the same trend seen over the past couple of years. Also, countywide VMT per capita followed the same trend. And then just a quick snapshot nationwide. Total VMT is slightly increasing, but VMT per capita is decreasing. So moving out of the kind of countywide trends into more of the corridor-based trends, this is the State of the System roadway network. Moving into the SIS traffic volume change from 2012 to 2013. So what we saw is we saw some pretty large decreases along I-95 in the northern half of the county, but then we did see some increases in traffic volume in the southern part of the county. State Road 528 actually saw increases along every portion of the corridor from 2012 to 2013 between 1% and 8%. So a few of the highlights. So moving from traffic volume change to vehicle miles traveled, VMT decreased by 10% along I-95. This is actually the lowest vehicle miles traveled that we've seen in the last 6 years. State Route 528 increased by 8%, and this is actually the highest that we've seen in the past 6 years. And then since 2008, vehicle miles traveled has decreased by 20% on I-95 and has increased by 3% on State Route 528. So looking at congestion along assist facilities, I-95 actually saw an increase in congestion. Now what is going on there is, even though I-95 saw a total volume decrease along the whole corridor, the portions that were already congested saw an increase in traffic volume. So that's why, even though the VMT and the traffic volumes decreased along the whole corridor, there were portions that were already congested that actually increased in vehicles. And over the past 5 years, 4 of those years have seen 528 with no congestion. So moving into the regional and non-regional roadways, what we saw is we saw a decrease in traffic on both the regional and non-regional facilities. A few highlights: the largest increases were seen along US 192 west of I-95 and US 1 in Titusville. The largest decreases were seen US 1 north of the Pineda Causeway, US 1 just south of Titusville, and then portions of 050 and A1A. So looking at the congestion for the regional and non-regional facilities, overall it's been decreasing over the past few years, 11% in 2009, and we're looking at 7% congestion in 2013. 90% of the lane miles in the network is less than an hour, and then the number of lane miles experiencing congestion between 2 and 3 hours increased from 5 segments to 6 segments, so not a big increase. And then this map just shows the duration of that congestion on the non-regional facilities, and there's a few highlights there. Portions of State Road 520, San Filippo, Wickham Road, and Babcock Street. So before I get into the rankings, just a quick summary of the trends that I just discussed. Demographics over the past 4 years show an increase in the older population and a decrease in the younger population. Traffic volumes in VNT are continuing to decrease from the peak that we saw in 06 and 07. And transit fixed route ridership has consistently increased over the past 5 years. So now I'll move from the county-wide trends, the corridor-specific trends, into the roadway segment rankings. So changes from 2012 to 2013 SOS. We reviewed classification of segments related to regional versus non-regional, and we reclassified a few of the roads, the biggest one being Wickham Road. So that one was previously a non-regional facility. When we went back and looked at it, we determined that it should be a regional facility since it's such a long corridor and it connects the various parts of the county. We also revised the safety scoring to include the 5-year data, which is what I explained earlier. And this is to reduce the fluctuations in the annual score. 1 year we would have a segment that would be number 1. The next year it may not have as many crashes and it may fall off the list completely due to the safety score. So we're hoping to kind of even out the safety scoring and how it affects the rankings. So just to refresh everybody, the technical ranking factors that go into this are the existing congestion, the future LRTP activity, the existing traffic volumes, intermodal significance, that's your CIS, regional, non-regional, safety, whether the roadway is a hurricane evacuation route, and then prior funding in the TIP. So moving into the top ranked CIS facilities, we looked at the top 10. State Route 528 actually had a segment jump onto the list for the first time in the last couple years. 3 of the top 4 segments were in the top 4 in 2012. Those are all on I-95. And only 2 of the top 10 were not in the 2012 rankings, and those are the ones that are highlighted in orange on the table. So moving into the top ranked regional facilities, all of the top 10 segments are in the LRTP or have TIP funding for widening operations and multimodal improvements. In most cases, some of the large jumps that we saw in the rankings was due to changes in the TIP funding. And as you'll see, like in the previous slide, the ones in orange are the ones that have been added to the list from the previous year. So the top ranked non-regional roadways, 7 of the top 10 were not in the top 10 in 2012. And then 17 of those are actually due to the rankings. And like I had mentioned at the beginning of this section, this is largely due to the reclassification of roadways. So when you're pulling roadways out of the non-regional, making them regional, it gives opportunity for some of these other roadways to make the top 25 list. And then one bullet at the bottom, Hollywood Boulevard had 4 of the top 6 ranked segments. And then the next two slides just give graphical representation of where these roadways are in the county. So in the northern half, you'll see we have a couple sections of I-95, State Road 528, State Road 520A1A. And then in the southern half of the county is where we have the majority of these corridors. You have US 192, I-95, Babcock, and Woodward. So that concludes the presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
Along your safety data, are you tracking fatal pedestrian?
Yes, we are. And we didn't include that in the presentation, but we have a section in the SOS that's specifically for bike ped safety. And then we also have a more detailed breakdown in the safety report as well about bike ped metrics and looking at different contributing causes, injury severity, and different things like that.
I'm looking at your information and it has vehicle miles traveled down 2.8%. And then traffic volume is down 9%. But are we at, or is it at a constant level of the amount of fatalities that you're receiving? If it's decrease in traffic flow, it stands to reason there should be some type of correlation between, if you've got a drop in traffic, you shouldn't have an increase in accidents.
Right, and we haven't gone to that level of analysis yet. And with the change in how we're reporting safety moving forward, looking at 5 years of data instead of 1 year of data, what we'll be doing is we're starting that right now. So we're setting that baseline of, okay, here's how many fatalities we have over the last 5 years, and then moving forward, we can correlate that back to traffic volume and see if we're seeing those trends pan out over the next, 3, 4, 5 years.
And Lee, two more questions I'd like to ask you. Is there any statistical data that substantiates people in age groups over a certain age are prone to accidents in the daytime or at nighttime? Because vision may be impaired as you get older, reflex time. There's no information on that. Can that be incorporated into it?
Absolutely, yeah. The crash data that we obtain actually gives driver age. So we can go back and actually as part of the emphasis areas, we're looking at the at-risk drivers, which are your aging road users and your teens. So we've gone back and in the safety report, we're gonna have a very detailed section about how many older drivers do we have getting into accidents, how many younger drivers. We're also breaking that down by time of day and day of week as well. So that data will be in there.
And my last question is, you said that you're in 95 in South Brevard County, that's where you're seeing the largest increase because they're working on 95. Are there any other preventive measures that they're putting on? Because I would imagine somebody driving after 10 hours and they're in South, on 95 in South Brevard County. And if they don't see a lot of signs saying, road work being done, or a police officer or a flashing sign to get their attention, they may literally drive off the road. Right. Honestly. So is there any plans on, with the increase in numbers of putting either more signs, more warnings, or?
We haven't done, at least us specifically for our report, didn't go to that level of detail. I know that countywide there are projects going on to determine, okay, what's going on in construction zones. So we're looking at crashes before, during, and after construction to see, and it's a trend that's just starting to catch on because I think that everybody knows that it's been an issue for however long roadway construction's been going on, but it's just starting to get to that point of, okay, now that we're starting to correlate crashes to construction areas, let's go back and see if we can do some before, during, and after studies to look at preventative countermeasures for that.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Where can we get a copy of this presentation, electronic copy? I couldn't find it on your website.
Right, so the, what we'll do is we'll post this electronically after the meeting, and we'll make it available.
The whole state of the system report will be on our website.
Right, yeah, and the safety report once it gets published.
Great. Okay, my question, same as the mayor, one of them was, I won't remember everything you said, and I sure can't read it in this fine print.
Right.
Right. Important thing I noticed you down here, and I just want to only because I'm your representative on the transit situation. On this thing, transit went up 9%, and I'm reading it increased for the 21st straight year, which was a record breaking of 2,285,000.
Right.
And I guess the main point is thank the commissioners, the TPO here, and Florida Department of Transportation for providing the money to buy the $8 million worth of new buses to give these people a ride on.
Right, right.
So sometimes we say give me more, but we don't say thanks for what you've already given.
Right.
Cape Canaveral, Cocoa Beach, the real benefit of that. Thank you.
Any other questions for Travis? Okay, thank you very much, Travis.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Chair would entertain a motion to adopt, I'm sorry. Oh, part two. Georgiana.
Okay, in July, we adopted the strategic intermodal system project priorities. And today we're going to be talking about our regionally significant projects. This is the network that functions on a regional level. Our growth management subcommittee met on August the 18th to discuss all of the existing priorities and any new projects that we may want to consider. And of course, this is where the planning meets the money. This is where we want to get every project that we want to get funded with state and federal money, and we turn it over to Lorena, and she works to come back in December and let us know what we got funded on our priority list. The number one priority, the St. John's Heritage Parkway, just to kind of give a little brief overview, the section from Malabar to Emerson, the city has underway, and final completion should be in October, I think. The section from Emerson to the C-54 Canal or the city limits, it's already been designed and permitted, and the city will build that in conjunction with the county's portion, which is from the North Palm Bay city limits up to 192. And all the right-of-way has been acquired on that section, and the county commission has given permission to go to bid. So things are really moving forward. So that means the next priority, or the number one priority is of the parkway is from 192 to Ellis Road. That is the next piece. The county is pursuing acquisition for right-of-way for construction, and of course we want to move forward with the construction phase on that. Both of the interchanges, north and south, have already been fully funded, and of course Ellis Road is on our strategic intermodal system priority list. So we're moving. Number two and number three. Number two is US 192 Hollywood Boulevard and Evans. And number three is 192 at Wickham and Minton. Both of these projects were a result of the 192 feasibility study. The intersections were the priority. The plan was to focus our resources on Ellis and change the current CIS designation from 192 to Ellis Road. And then after Ellis improvements have been implemented, then we can determine the need for the additional capacity for 192, specifically between Wickham and Gary. So that was the plan. The 192 studies, we had to do some, or these two intersection projects, we did need to do some additional analysis to define the preferred alternative and a benefit cost analysis. And so our consultant Kittleson will be coming to you in October to present those findings. Number four is the A1A corridor. That is our number 4 priority. And what we decided to do is look over to the right and say, implement study recommendation CB2. So on the next page, we list all of the A1A improvements. And of course, I will call those out when we get to page 2. Number 5 is Babcock Street. This is the widening of the 6 lane from Malabar Road to Palm Bay Road. The design is coming to an end on that project, and we will have construction plans and right-of-way maps very soon. The district has funded right-of-way in fiscal year 18 and 19 for approximately $17 million. That's not enough. We need about $10 million more. Some of the homeowners have reached out to the DOT, and they would really, what we would love is the advanced right-of-way acquisition the US 16 lane from the County Hall to Park Avenue. The PD&E on this project is funded in fiscal year 19. Number 9 is the Washingtonia extension. This is the new 2-lane, 4-lane road running parallel and west of I-95 connecting to the Future Parkway and to Stadium Boulevard. The county has PD&E set aside funding, about $1.5 million set aside for fiscal year 14 and 15, I believe, for the PD&E, and the district has volunteered to administer it. However, the estimate came in higher than the funding we had set aside. The estimate they have is $3.4 million for PD&E, and so we need more money to actually put on this project before they can actually move forward with it.
And we're hoping to see if we can have some.
Yes, we would, and, this is off the state highway system, so we would need to use federal money to add to this project, if that's the direction we need to go. And number 10 and 11, these are brand new projects added to the priority list this year. Number 10 is Malabar Road, submitted from the city of Palm Bay. It's the 4-lane from Minton to Palm Bay Parkway. Phase 1 would be from Minton to Jupiter, and phase 2 would be from Jupiter to the Parkway. The city has completed a preliminary engineering study, and they have requested PD&E. Now, again, this is off the state highway system, so clearly there is a need for the project, but we would, if the DOT would participate in it, we would need to fund it with federal money for this project to get done. I think at this point, the thoughts were, is it needs to be on the priority list, it was a need, and then we would move forward in the future to determine what would be the next project. And the same applies for number 11, which is Babcock Street. This is the county portion. And we broke it out into 3 different segments, 2 intersection improvements at Malabar and Walkeria, and then widening from Malabar to Foundation Park, and then from Foundation Park to Walkeria Road. Same thing, the county has already done a preliminary engineering study. Clearly, there's going to be a need. It needs to be on the priority list and determine how best to move forward with that in the future. Any questions on that page? All right, let's move to page 2. B2 at the top of the page, these are our A1A projects. I'm not going to go through them, but they are now, would now be officially on our priority list if you approve them. And we will work with DOT to make sure the section by Avon by the C is incorporated as well. Section C1, this is our Transportation System Management and Operations, our ITS, ATMS. And number 1 is our ITS master plan. We are currently underway on this master plan with our stakeholders throughout the county. And basically, this plan is going to evaluate the current system. It's going to determine the future needs throughout the county and develop implementation strategies, actual projects that we need to move forward with. Number 2 is a traffic management center. project submitted to us by the Tyco Airport. It's been on here for a while. Perimeter Road Extension realignment. They're asking for a PD&E study. And this is an economic development project that will allow extension of the north-south runway. And so it has been on here for a while. I think the estimate is only going to be probably around $1.5 million. But we're not really sure how to get this funding to go through. We've been kind of working with Jim Wickstrom, the aviation, the DOT aviation person. And he says there seems to be not really a mechanism. But we have it on our priority list, and if there is any funding that we can use, then we would definitely help them with that. Especially since I think you guys are looking for PD&E projects this year, I've heard.
Right.
All right, moving on to page 3. Section D1, this is our complete streets section. Just to remind everyone, we had 6 complete street projects that we're really excited about that are fully funded throughout the county. 3 of them are going to construction later this year or early next year. One of them is in Cape Canaveral, one is in Cocoa Beach, and the other one is in Cocoa. And then the other 3 are just finishing up on the feasibility study to kind of understand exactly what the vision is and updating the estimates that we have. But we do have design and construction funded also on those other 3 projects. And these are 2 new projects, both from Melbourne. Number 1 is Front Street from Melbourne Avenue to New Haven, and number 2 is Pineapple Avenue from the Valley to Aurora. Both projects are highly traveled by pedestrians and cyclists, and there's a variety of civic and recreational uses located adjacent to the corridor. So we have some leftover funding in our complete streets feasibility contract. So the thoughts were we would like to use that money to fund these 2 projects and do a little feasibility just like we've done with our other projects, and kind of dig into them and see what these projects are like, and then consider funding the design and construction in the future. Section D2, these are our corridor planning studies. The district has funded 7 studies, starting with State Road 3, Courtney Parkway, all the way down to US 1. They will be administering these corridor studies in-house, and we just received the scopes. All the municipalities were a part of these meetings. And Courtney Parkway actually has been studied to death, so it's going to move forward into a more in-depth conceptual type study, which we're like happy about. Sarno Road is the only project that did not get funded for a corridor study specifically. We're awaiting for Apollo Boulevard to be finished. That really needs to be completed so we get a good idea of what the traffic is going to be before we move forward in that study. So those projects are moving forward. Okay, section D3. This is a new section on the priority list.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Before we leave the corridor studies, during the preliminary meetings for Courtney, there was a discussion about extending that up to Smith and Grant above the barge canal and down, I think, now,
Yes.
is that still part of the process? Because
Yes.
particularly with the barge canal piece, I think is critical to discuss. So will this be amended to say that, or?
Yes, it should, absolutely, it should have been. We actually have not received the scopes on all of them, but absolutely, that will be amended, and those limits were changed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, section D3. The TPO receives roughly $500,000 a year for transportation alternative projects. These are our bike ped projects. And it's really not a lot of money. However, this came out of the MAP 21 legislation. So because this was new, we created a new supplemental application, and we discussed it with our road management subcommittee, and we received projects from all the different municipalities. And the new application, we have a new bike mobility plan that has over 240 projects. We did this extensive projects to put the money on, we have almost 500,000. And the funding would be in fiscal year 18, so it's a little out there. But it makes sense that we set this money aside, and Cape Canaveral and Hooper Beach both submitted us applications for this TA funding. So the projects that would fall in line with fiscal year 18, we would like to put that money, set it aside and put money on those capital improvements for bike ped projects.
Our successors, thank you for that.
And then the number 2 project, which is also on A1A, is in Satellite Beach. It is addition of bike lanes and sidewalks on the west side of A1A from the south city limits to the very north city limits. Satellite Beach submitted this application, and the interesting thing about this one, there is a resurfacing project that is underway. Well, the design is underway, and the construction will be taking place in fiscal year 16. And so the CRA has a little bit of money set aside as well for improvements. And so during the resurfacing meeting with DOT, it made a lot of sense that we could use this money that we had, which is it's basically $576,000 in fiscal year 16, that we could use to put on this resurfacing project. They're already going to have the road torn out, and this is a lot of things in the box to make this project more than just a resurfacing. And so we felt like that this made a lot of sense. And then number 3, we call it the Cocoa Connectors. Cocoa submitted 3 sidewalk projects on Dixon, Forest, and Bar. Very small projects that will complete some connectivity. There's a lot of people that do a lot of walking in that area, and we felt like this was a really good project. So we're proposing for setting aside money in fiscal year 18 for that. And then the last one is Valkyria Road. They submitted a project for an 8-foot multi-use sidewalk extension. Grant Valkyria has not received a lot of funding from us, and we thought it was a very good project. And so we set aside $577,000 for construction in fiscal year 19. So those are the 4 projects that we're proposing to use our TA money. And then D4 is a group of safe routes to school projects that we received this year. And we are going to turn all of these projects over to DOT and have them go through them. We've heard that there is a little bit of safe routes to school money up in the central office, and that's what we're hoping for. If not, they may look at funding these projects with some safety money if they can approve, if we can prove that there may be a safety issue. They're looking at innovative ways of using safety money these days. Okay, and page 4, this is just a list of projects that are already funded through construction. We like to, as projects get funded, we want to move them off the priority list and put them on this list, so we can kind of make sure we don't lose a project in case it gets unfunded or deferred, and we put it back on the list. And then page 5 is candidate projects for future priority consideration. When we meet with our growth management subcommittee, we talk about a lot of different projects, and these are projects that have been discussed that are not quite ripe enough to go on the priority list, so we can put them on this list so we can know that we've discussed them before and that these need to continue to consider in the future. And then the only other thing I want to mention, we also talked about, we have some SU money available in fiscal year 18 and 19. It's a little over $5 million. And so our growth management subcommittee did not clearly want to allocate that money. And we talked about that there are things that we may want to consider in the future, a potential SID loan for the St. John's Heritage Parkway for Ellis Road and phase 2 of the parkway. And a SID loan is a state infrastructure bank loan, which allows you to borrow the money and then you pay it back on a future allocation. So this may be an option that we want to consider. Other things are our ITS projects. After our master plan is completed, we're going to have ITS projects. They're going to need funding. Access to transit, that was another item that was discussed. anything. Those are the proposed priorities. Do you have any questions?
Georgina, I think you covered them all very well.
I'm probably gonna be showing off my intelligence here, but I'm gonna do it anyway. On D3, you said the implementation of the multimodal improvement system, you're gonna put $500,000 aside for the project, 2018. Now, when you say that word, put it aside, how do you do that?
Well, I haven't talked to Lorena about this, but what we've done in the past, and she may tell me I can't do that. What we've done in the past is we've set up like a reserve box. We did it for Apollo Boulevard, for instance. We identify it, A1A, multimodal improvements, fiscal year 18. I know we've done it in the past. You know, she will let us know whether, you know, if that's okay, and I can't imagine why it wouldn't be. The money will be sitting there, it'll have an FF number, it'll show up in the DOT work program, and when we get ready to use it, it'll be there.
Now,
We'll know it.
when you put $500,000 aside, will that cover the whole project at today's cost?
No.
No. Okay, so it's like a down payment on what you're gonna start.
It will be some project along the corridor. There was that whole group of improvements. It may be used for a sidewalk. It may be used for a bike lane or some other improvement that is needed.
So when they're put aside, you put in a
Reserve box.
reserve box. Now, does it specifically say, because the bottom one for Valkyria Road was $525,000 that you're gonna put aside.
577.
I'm sorry, gotta turn up the volume, wait a minute, there we go, okay. So together in that box, there's $1 million?
Well, no, Valkyria Road will be its own project.
Oh,
It'll have
okay.
its own FM number. The only one that will be in a reserve box would be this A1A multimodal improvements, because we don't have those improvements defined yet. I think at this point, we'll put it in the reserve box and then we'll figure out where to put it.
And then, when you said when you need to transfer funds, or it drops down on the list, it's transferred over into another category where it's needed for another project?
I think what the district will probably do is once we identify the projects or project on A1A, they may just change the description of it.
Yeah, we'll apply it to whatever the project number is.
Well, if there's a project number set up, correct.
Okay, thank you. I feel much smarter now.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Georgiana?
Good job.
Thank you.
Chair would then entertain a motion to adopt the fiscal year 2014 project priorities for non-SIS roadways.
Randall would move for approval.
Mayor Reynolds, thank you.
Second.
Captain Gray. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you to staff for the big blow up here, certainly better than a vote.
Anything for you?
I don't know why we get A1A on here.
Item 6H, approval resolution 15-10, 2040 long-range transportation plan vision. Since Claire is going to enlighten us.
Yeah, the members recall, prior to the July meeting, it seems like a long time ago, only 2 months ago, we had a workshop on the long-range plan vision. We presented a draft version of the vision plan. We had that down in the commission chambers. Many of you attended, and thank you very much. And we indicated in July that we'll be bringing this back to formal ratification. So here's Chris and Claire from Arizona Planning Group to brief you on the vision.
Good morning, and for all of those who attended, I think most everybody on this board was there, and I appreciate you coming and showing your support and chiming in. It was a good activity and good effort.
So the vision that you're going to be looking at and hopefully approving today is the culmination of a lot of discussions with a lot of people over the last year and a half. And what we're trying to find is what are the county's next economic drivers and how do you leverage transportation to support those drivers. As I said, we've been at this for about a year and a half. We started with a discussion with you and the two committees. Got some very clear direction, I think, from those discussions. We did a survey in the summer of 2013, symposium in the fall. We mainly had people from local governments, and agencies across the county. We did a transportation scenarios workshop, which was very well attended in the winter. And then, as Bob mentioned, we had a workshop with you all and others in the summer of 2014. The numbers that you see there are the number of people that participated in each of these functions. And it was for a visioning exercise, it was a very good turnout. We got very good direction from that turnout. Consistently, starting with the conversation that we had with you, there was a set of common aspirations that came up. Those were take advantage of the intermodal connections that the county currently has, take advantage of the high-tech industry that the county currently has, find the right balance between the environment and development, and then improve how we live and travel. What we found out from that improvement how we live and travel was provide more choices in how we live and travel. Those themes, those aspirations translated very directly into the vision themes, which included leverage what is uniquely Brevard in terms of economic prosperity, which is investing in the ports and continuing the high-tech focus. Natural resources preserve what is uniquely Brevard, which clearly are the rivers and the shoreline, and how we live and travel, provide choices and find the right balance. Now the vision map goes along with those themes. We had a lot of input, not only with the workshops that we talked about, but we had some follow-up conversations with, I think, just about all the jurisdictions and agencies in the county to get their approval and endorsement and support of what we did. We got some very good suggestions and recommendations as we had those discussions. You do have a separate map that reflects the last conversation we had. We finally were able to get in touch with the planners and NASA. They made some suggestions about how to change some things up in their part of this area. So that's what that different map is representing. So the vision map and the themes will start guiding us in terms of how we put the long-range transportation plan together. Now, in terms of the workshop exercise and what people thought of the vision that we presented, we asked people to answer these questions. Does the vision meet the goals that you have for the county? What do you like best about the vision? What do you like the least? What are the challenges to accomplishing these goals? And we got some very good feedback, but one of the things we asked people was, give us your feedback about whether the vision supports these areas, economic prosperity, natural resources, and live and travel. So what you're seeing on the graph is very strong support across all three measures in terms of the vision and how it's meeting each of those different areas. So with the adoption of the vision that will hopefully occur this morning, we then start putting together the goals and objectives for the plan. And we've got some very interesting recommendations that we'll be making to you, hopefully at the next meeting in terms of the goals and objectives. We'll be working with staff to get those fleshed out. That then translates into a policy framework. The policy will start laying out for each of the quarter types. We've identified in the vision map different quarter types. We've also identified different place types. We're going to have a policy framework for each of those quarter types and each of those place types. That will then help us put together quarter studies for some of the more key quarters across the county that are going to be important to implementing the vision overall. That translates into a list of projects that are going to be needed to implement the vision over the long term. We do financial forecasts to bring this back into what's financially feasible, and then we use those forecasts to start defining which projects on the needs list actually will go into the plan. So those are the steps ahead of us as we move forward, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay,
thank you.
Chair will entertain a motion to approve the resolution 15-10, 2040, offering.
Mr. Chair, Randall can move for
Staff reports.
We will again meet in October in this room, the supervisor's election, which is in the Florida room for voting machine storage and deployment. So we will be back in this room in October. I'm pleased to let you know that Lee Holt's not with us today, so she's not here to talk about her baby, the strategic plan. We do have an updated strategic plan. Lee is in Pittsburgh at the National Pro-Bike for Walk Conference, presenting to that conference on our Complete Streets program. So that's good. There will be a couple of other presentations, national organizations that will be presenting Complete Streets, been very well received, and very proud of it. I think now we can start looking at presentations on the vision program too. I'm bringing this up because it's not obvious sometimes to TPO members what's going on in the rest of the transportation planning world. It's our job to track that. But we are engaged in some very cutting edge, state-of-the-art activities here. And we have really good staff to make it work and good consultant support to see it through. So I just wanted to use Lee's presence in Pittsburgh as an opportunity to pat everybody on the back for the good job we continue to do.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
If I could add just one thing, the All Aboard Florida items were removed from the agenda, but I know many of the people in this room are following All Aboard Florida and that project. And one of the major milestones as far as evaluation of that project is the completion of the environmental impact statement for the Federal Railroad Administration. And that was supposed to have been completed much earlier this year, but the date keeps getting set back. I talked to the Indian River County attorney day before yesterday, and he advised me that he had talked with Federal Railroad officials who advised him that they now expect that that report will probably be released within the next 2 weeks. So we'll see if that happens.
Under local government report, I'd like to note a correction on my Parkway report that's attaching to this item. It says county's construction of the section that is going to bid to go south to Emerson is not the case. We want to go as far as the Palm City limits. County staff, the Palm staff are working out an arrangement to deal with the gap between Emerson and the city limits, but it will be a complete roadway. The city's looking at finishing their work probably in early October or so. And the goal had been to have a joint ribbon cutting and groundbreaking, and we'll see if that can be, if the timing works out to allow that to be able to do that. The second point, and I alluded to this under the TACC's report at the top of the meeting. Came to our attention in August that the 3 MPOs in South Florida, Miami, and Palm Beach, were able to work with All Over Florida and the Federal Railroad Administration to establish a continuous quiet zone from central Miami to the North Palm Beach County city limits, covering how many hundred crossings and how many jurisdictions. The TPOs served as the applicant on behalf of the local governments in their respective counties. The way the procedure normally works is each individual local government will apply for the quiet zone. But by bundling them up into one application under the, in their case, MPOs, it's a more efficient, streamlined process that makes sure that everything gets covered. There's a lot of paperwork that has to be moved and forms completed, and it is, in my view, a more efficient way of going about it. The second, and what I'm really suggesting is reaction from the members on whether you'd like to see this TPO proceed on a similar course in regard to seek a continuous quiet zone in regard from this, the northernmost is crossing this the Canal Boulevard south to the Indiana County line. In which case the TPO would be the applicant with the consent of the Federal Bureau Administration using the South Florida procedure. The TPO would be the applicant on behalf of the local governments that are affected by all of those Florida grade crossings. The second component to this is that we are beginning to realize that the safety improvements all over Florida is required to make by the Federal Railroad Administration in order to have passenger service. The safety upgrades are extensive enough that in, let's say, most cases, the quiet zone requirements are met. They will be met by virtue of the work that all of Florida is having to do. And maybe what we don't know is if there will be crossings where the over Florida work is not sufficient to meet the quiet zone. So that's the area where there would need to be additional equipment installed and additional capital expenditure. However, if we have this coalition to develop common quiet zone, we can also use the TPO to apply for the matching funds that are available, that were authorized by the legislature in the last session. That could be done under an umbrella provided by the TPO. And we also will be checking with a concept of perhaps using the investment that all over Florida will be making in safety upgrades, that we can use that as a match for the state quiet zone dollars. So if this plays out, we would, in the end, have a continuous quiet zone from Canal Boulevard south to Sebastian River with no capital outlay on the part of the guard communities and both governments. It doesn't address the maintenance issue, of course, but at least in terms of capital outlay, the concept would cover the cost. Allbird, Florida has agreed to procure and install and as part of their upgrades, any additional safety equipment needed to meet quiet zone requirements. So the city won't have to be involved in design and retrofitting or anything like that. It will be done at one time, which is more efficient. And as it's been said before, that at this point in time, Allbird, Florida is in the process of evaluating and actually designing the crossing improvements they need to make at the crossing north of Palm Beach County. So they're working on part 2 of their alignment, going through and looking at every crossing and designing the upgrades, safety upgrades that are necessary. So this is the time when Allbird, Florida needs to know if there's going to be additional safety equipment required so that they can work it into the plans. They need to have those plans done so that the Federal Railroad Administration can certify them to operate passenger service. There are many things the Federal Railroad looks at before a railroad is authorized to begin passenger service. The safety level of the grade crossing, safety protection is one of them. So although they may not be operating service, assuming that they will be in the future, for a couple of years, they need to get the information from us on quiet zones now so that it can be worked into their certification package for the Federal Railroad Administration. I hope I make that clear. So the point of this is that it will never be cheaper to have quiet zones. If there is rail in our future, passenger rail in our future, in my view, it's prudent to look at how we can minimize any impacts that additional rail service would have. And quiet zones to me is a way to minimize the impact on the community. And I'll remind you all that quiet zones apply not just to passenger, but also to freight trains. So this would affect all of the trains, pretty much south of 528. Will be no horns, 24 hours a day. So I will leave this up to you as a discussion item. That's why we're not asking for a motion. I would like to bring this back in October for a formal ratification or consideration by the TPO. I'm letting you know now so that if you believe you need to discuss it with your respective councils or the commission, there's a month here for you all to talk to your staff or your other council members to see what the individual city's point of view is on this. I will relay, as I said in the opening and in the report, that each of a representative from each of the jurisdictions affected by the Florida grade crossings was present at the TAC meeting. And I specifically proposed this idea to them and got 7 nodding of heads. From a staff point of view, this is efficient, saves work for them. We get consistent treatment, one point of contact for Federal Railroad Administration and all over Florida, which should simplify. A way to turn this into matching money to the state. So I think it has a lot of things going for it.
Yes, I do. An interesting thing for the members may want to consider as they give this some thought over the next month is that it may be efficient for another reason. I'll take the city of Melbourne as a good example. There's 22 crossings in the city of Melbourne. However, they're not all subject to the jurisdiction of the city of Melbourne. Some of them are subject to the county's jurisdiction, and some of them are subject to the state's jurisdiction. It's whoever has operational and maintenance responsibility for the road as it goes over the grade crossing. So what you have is, it doesn't matter what jurisdiction you're in, you may have crossings in your jurisdiction that are not your responsibility, which just sort of causes a crazy quilt, if you will, of various governmental agencies. So if you have every single governmental agency running on trying to file an application, I think it's easy to see that you could have, it just adds to the level of chaos, if you will. And therefore, I think that's an additional consideration why it might be more sensible to have one applicant coordinate everything for Brevard County. Might end up being cheaper in the long run.
Did you have a comment about that or?
No, the next one.
I had it brought to my attention throughout my conversation with our city manager that we got a bill from the railroad system of $114,000. Just showed up. My question is, if you put twice the amount of tracks down, you have twice the amount of safety factors involved in it, is that bill gonna double? And if we only have 3 crossings, and we've received other bills in the past to maintain the less traveled crossings, and they were like $50,000 or $60,000. Would that, this was, I think, that every city who has a crossing should be involved in. If you're putting another set of tracks in, I've never seen an insurance company say, you're gonna have twice the amount of flow, so your rates are gonna go down.
First of all, let's separate the question of maintenance versus the question of installation of equipment in the quiet zones. They're 2 separate things. There is going to be additional equipment that all over Florida will be putting in that will fall to the local governments to maintain over time. They will be putting in a second track, so there will be another pavement area that will have to be maintained over time. That will happen. That's coming. That's different than, please let's separate the idea of having the TPO serve as the lead on implementing quiet zones versus the long-term maintenance costs. There's 2 separate issues. I don't disagree with your point.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. There will be additional maintenance costs long-term. Exactly how that plays out, I think there's still some room for discussions all over Florida about how those maintenance costs are handled. and the type and the amount of notice that a local government gets on an upcoming maintenance job. You know, if they just send you a bill and don't let you know ahead of time that there's gonna be work done, how are you supposed to budget for that?
Well, that's
You know,
what
I
the
think
city,
I think there's some procedural things that can be worked out all over Florida and the FEC, and I think there's gonna be a very good opportunity to do that. We've had more dialogue with the FEC Railway in the past year than we've ever had. So, they want some things from us and we want some things from them, so now's a good time.
Under the premise that we all hope that Elbord, Florida will be successful and ultimately lead to passenger service from Miami to Jacksonville passing through the entire county, and based on the fact that you just said it would never be cheaper to get these quiet zones implemented, might it not be worth thinking about making a request for a county-wide quiet zone?
I understand the point you're making. However, Allward, Florida will not be making their substantial upgrades north of Canal Grove Boulevard as part of this project. When and if they move into phase 2, Jacksonville, I believe we'll see a similar opportunity for the northern part of Brevard and all the way up to Jacksonville, where we could perhaps replicate, if we do a common approach, we could replicate that at a later time.
Mr. Chairman, as part of an answer to Councilmember Green, one thing that council member you may want to do is talk with your city attorney about the grade crossing agreements that you have for the particular grade crossings within your city. I can tell you that I've looked at them for the city of Millburn, and most of them, and these grade crossing agreements, most of them are very old. A lot of them were consummated in the 50s and the 60s and 70s. They're interesting agreements. They are good for 1 year and renew on a year-to-year basis. They also require the city to pay for, or the county, as the case may be, or the state to pay for all costs of maintenance, and many of them even seem to be worded in such a way that you will be responsible for laying the second set of tracks, whether you like it or not. The alternative is FEC could terminate the agreement. You say, well, that sounds outrageous and onerous. It is. Those are the agreements that were signed by a lot of local governments back in the day, and we continue to live with those agreements. And they're all of them bear some similarities, but they're all different, because for every crossing, there's a different agreement, different worded agreement. And some crossings, actually, you don't even have any agreements at all. So you have to wonder, you know, what kind of a system we're living under, but it is what it is. There's also, you might ask your city attorney to review a memorandum that was prepared by County Attorney Knox, shedding some question on the viability of those agreements and posing some different alternatives for action in the future.
Bob, it appears that your discussion, you would put that item on the October agenda for
That's
consideration.
I think we will have availability of time on the October agenda. I would like to mention whether or not the local governments feel that I need to provide a formal request to the city manager for the council to consider this, each of your councils to consider this, so that you all are comfortable in voting on something in October, or just, you know, kind of procedural direction that will make you all feel comfortable coming back in October and being able to get some closure on this, so we can move ahead.
I can't see getting the extra cost, and, you know, we're not getting anything out of it. They're not gonna make any stops in Brevard County, they're gonna fly right through Brevard. You know, just putting a tax burden on our taxpayers by putting the bill to the extras, and I don't think we should do it. I don't support
may I specify what you don't support?
The maintenance, if we're gonna have to put the second set of tracks on, like you just stated, that we're gonna be responsible.
We're not going to put second set of tracks. So they call false language that some of the agreements are worded, that could be, it's implied, that Albert Florida is not asking any local government to put second set of tracks.
What the request is to see if the city of Cocoa would be in agreement for the TPO to proceed with the quiet zone, for the entire area. Not really, just, does the city of Cocoa want to do it, or are they in agreement for you to vote in favor of the TPO? That's where some cost savings would be, as opposed to each of the municipalities that are affected doing their own.
Mr. Chairman, we'll bring it before the Board of Commissioners, and we'll let you know how the process goes. We'll bring it before the Board of Commissioners, and I'll let you know the process of how we'll do it.
Just I think it'd be a good idea to make visit to each of the vacancy council and the application committee, so that as long as any conflict, we know the phase it out. Any other management? I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to reiterate the statement that was made earlier, and that is in regards to a meeting that's coming up this Monday. It is technically the corridor study